It's 8:16 and we have in our studios none other than the indefatigable Minister for Communications and Digitalisation and Member of Parliament for Okaikwe. Sorry, Ablekuma. Okay, yeah, I'm not saying more.
Okaikwe. At this stage.
Benji, I think you should do the interview. This is not going to go right. Okay, I'm taking your encouragement. I won't give up. Relax. Minister for Digitalisation, Communications and Digitalisation, and the MP for Ablekuma West constituency. Very passionate about technology, and so she's here with us this morning. Mrs. Ursula Owusu-Ekuful. Good morning.
Good morning, Xtra.
So nice to see you.
As always. It's been a while.
It has, It has. And this is the year that God will redeem all of us.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
The rest shall remain unsaid.
If you know, you know. So, how are things at the ministry?
By His grace, it's going well.
Enjoying yourself?
Yes. It's there's never a dull moment in this field. Okay. So there's always something to engage your attention. Mm-hmm. And there's so much happening in this tech space that you can't afford to slack or relax. Mm-hmm. But let me say good morning to your listeners and viewers. It's always a pleasure to be back in your studios, and I'm looking forward to our little chat.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this since I was. In fact, I listened to the briefing yesterday.
Okay.
And when it all ended, I said, "Oh, so we now have a politics of digitalization." Because you had to react to claims made by,
it's unfortunate,
the NDC on a number of things, and we will get to that in a moment.
Unfortunate.
But generally, if you look back at the confirmation of your appointment as Minister for Communication then and now Minister for Communications and Digitalisation, how well will you say the ministry has performed in creating an enabling environment for Ghana to participate in this cyber world where everything is moving at the speed of light?
One of the first things I did when I took office was to invite my predecessor to thank him for the work that he had done, because governance is a continuum, and I don't think we should have this antagonistic attitude. You're either with me or you're against me when it comes to the development of the country. Everybody will do their bit. You can't do it all, and you will leave for someone else to come and continue. But you need to recognize that all the foundations that have been laid before you would work towards moving the agenda of developing the country forward. And so we've done a lot of work. But even from the time of President Rawlings in the liberalization of the telecoms industry, and from President Kufuor, who laid the foundations and actually built the legal and regulatory framework for and provided the ICT for accelerated development policy, which we are still using. That policy was formulated in 2003, I believe, and we're still using it. We're actually in the process of not 2003, 2005. Yeah, 2005. I'll check the dates. But we're still in the process of using that. The NCA law, the NITA law, all the legal instruments that are guiding the development of this sector were done in 2008 during President Kufuor's time. We're in the process of reviewing that because the industry has changed. And so you can't just sit there and say that I'm the one who did it all. It's not possible. You have to build on what has already been done. And so I thank all my predecessors for the work that they've done. And I hope my successors would also acknowledge that we've done a fantastic amount of work since we came to power. Now, I don't even know where to start from. We met the Eastern Corridor Road, but it was largely non-operational because there were significant fiber cuts along it during the construction of the Eastern Corridor Road. And so we met the Eastern Corridor fiber, but there were significant fiber cuts. So we need to investigate why there were so many fiber cuts. And we found that it hadn't been laid according to specifications. It was buried too close to the surface. So any little thing, some of it was lying in the open, somewhere in water. The ducts that were supposed to be covered were not. So we needed to work to repair all of that. In fact, during the current construction going on, we've had to put a lot of it on electricity poles or raised poles, do it in an aerial manner so it won't be disturbed. And so you do what you can to maintain the infrastructure that you've met. But what have we done since then? We've put it under new management. All the repairs are being done timeously. And so people benefiting from NITA services have observed a remarkable improvement in the output that they're making. We also find that without this government's focus, and I must thank the vision of the president for insisting that technology is the way to go, digital technology is the way to go. We cannot continue to do things as we already have. And so we need to focus on digitalization and work assiduously to bring all the national assets together, maximize it, leverage on it, and build upon it. And without the Vice President's input, civil servants, ministers, public servants, we tend to be very territorial in protecting our turf. So we don't recognize that you need to work with others to deliver the results that you want to deliver, because ultimately there's only one government, and without the active collaboration and cooperation of various sectors, it will be difficult to push the digital agenda. The Vice President brought it all together. Whether you are willing to work or not, he will put you all in a room, give you your marching orders, and insist that you deliver on the results that this government wants to achieve. And without that drive and determination, there's so much more that we could not have been able to do. So that's why I keep calling him the digital champion. Without him, it would have been difficult to deliver on the digitalization agenda of this government and build the digital Ghana agenda. You need to put in the digital infrastructure on which all these applications and services will ride. Ours is a private sector-led industry. So you necessarily have to work very closely with the private sector. They are profit motivated. And so government has to intervene and provide the enabling environment and sometimes the infrastructure on which they will provide their services, so that we can extend that infrastructure and the footprint to most parts of this country which otherwise would not have received those services. Now, if you look at mobile money interoperability, without a robust telecommunications network, you cannot deliver on mobile money services. You cannot participate in it. So it would defeat the purpose of the financial inclusion that we want. So you necessarily have to make sure that as many people in Ghana as possible have access to a robust network which will enable them to engage. One of the key lessons we learned during COVID was that without digital technology, it will be difficult to survive when there is a global pandemic of the nature that we experienced. Children were learning virtually. We had to scale up quickly so that public services could be delivered even during the lockdown, because it was necessary so government could continue to work. You look at the many health interventions that had to be delivered virtually. You look at the drone technology that we introduced that facilitated the delivery of essential medical supplies to the remotest parts of this country. even social interactions. You were locked down, but you could still have a voice or video call with somebody and keep in touch.
Yeah.
And for many people, that helped maintain their sanity. And it helps you to know that your loved ones are okay and to get things done. A lot of businesses had to move online. E-commerce came into its own. So just think about what we would have been unable to do if we hadn't worked to put in place several digital interventions since this government took power. So it was incumbent on us, with these lessons in mind, to accelerate the push towards connecting the country so that all citizens everywhere could benefit. Farmers need digital technology to get ready information about conditions there and to get their goods to market. And agricultural extension services can be delivered online. Traders need digital interventions to enable them to get their goods to market. Teachers need it for their research. Medical personnel need it for getting up-to-date information on whatever they're seeking to do, and even to promote telemedicine and teleconsultations and all of that. Everybody needs digital technology.
My mom needs it just to make a video call every once in a while just to check on her grandchildren.
I keep using the example of one of my mothers, as she's 82. She'll be 82 in September this year. She's the most avid Facebooker I have ever known. I mean, she stays up till midnight, and she's the one who gives me the latest filler in town and all of that. 82, and she has a whole new Facebook social media family. She calls them her children because they're always checking up on her, and you know, she's always interacting with them. So even for our aged folks, access to the internet provides them a means to stay connected, to stay active, to also update themselves on latest trends and information out there, and to just know what's going on, to know that they're not alone and they're not abandoned. So you don't have to actually move to visit them before they can keep in touch with you. Via social media, they can also be connected. So it is a tool that is useful for everybody, from toddlers who are playing with tablets, and we've turned to use them as babysitters, which is wrong.
Yeah.
And
Indeed.
so we need to minimize the way we expose them to yes, you need to minimize the amount of screen time they have, but it's convenient. It keeps them quiet. So most parents will just shove their phone in the hands of a crying toddler, and they are also excited about the games in there. There are pros and cons with every tool, but everybody needs it. So one of the key, how do I put it, commitments that this government made was to extend connectivity to as many of our unserved and underserved citizens as possible. And that's what gave birth to the Rural Telephony Project. I mentioned that the NDC in 8 years did 78 cell sites. And we realized that if we continued at that pace, yesterday the Minister for Information designated it her mouth, and I was shocked. It would take about 100 years to build 1,000 cell sites. Because if you're doing, let's say, 80 in 8 years, that's 10
a year.
10 a year. So it would take us 100 years to do 1,000 cell sites. We cannot afford, we don't have the luxury of that time. And so we built 430 in 2 years, from 2017 to 2018, in collaboration with the private sector. And even at that pace, we thought it was too slow. Now, network operators are only required to extend their services to district capitals under their license conditions. Anything beyond the district capital, if there is a commercial imperative for them to go there, they'll go there. If not, they won't, because they have to make a return on their investment. And it is very capital intensive. It's expensive to extend connectivity to the countryside. So we decided that government has to build the infrastructure. There is no way so many parts of our country which are not connected will be connected if we leave it to the network operators to do so. They'll do so at their own pace. They don't care that the people in my village are not connected. Or yesterday, Saboba and Zabzugu, Tatale, and other areas came up. But if the population there's no viable commercial activity, or the numbers don't warrant the extension of their services there, they won't. But they're all citizens of Ghana. So this government said, yes, we'll do it. So we built the infrastructure. Currently, we've built it to we've built 1,010 cell sites under this Rural Telephony and Digital Inclusion Project, which began in 2020. We'd been talking about it and working on it for a while, but it all came together in November 2020 when it was launched. And since then, we built 1,010 sites. We would have done more, but for COVID and our domestic financial challenges, we got the facility from China Exim Bank. And all those disbursements have slowed because of the challenges that we're facing currently. But having said that, all the equipment that we need to roll out all the 2016 sites are in country. Because we insisted that instead of importing it piecemeal, bring it all in, and then we'll work towards rolling it out. So all the 2016 cell sites equipment is we built 1,010, so there's 1,006 that are left to be constructed. They're all in warehouses today as we speak. So once we get the funding necessary to the subcontractors, they're ready to roll out the remaining cell sites. And they've assured me that once we do that, they can work quickly with multiple gangs to ensure that by June, July, August, all the sites will be up. And by September, most would be connected. I'm hopeful that by December, all these 2016 sites will be connected. Now, just imagine what that would do to those communities which will benefit from this infrastructure.
You know, this morning, early on, Benjamin and I, we talked about the effect of the continent-wide interoperability on us, and I think we quipped that when people can talk a lot easier, ideas are shared, actions are taken, the economy grows. So I can see in my mind's eye how this will impact on our own economy, because there are people who are in rural communities who are not currently connected, but have something to offer. And it is by being a part of this network that they might spot somebody, or somebody might spot them and create opportunities. You did say that you know, your sector is a private sector led sector, which means that your telcos and all the other players in that space are constantly going to be interfacing with the ministry. How has that relationship evolved over time?
I'm meeting several of them this afternoon. this morning from here, I have a series of meetings, and quite a few of them are coming in to see me. We have an excellent relationship. It hasn't always been, you can't always have it your way. And so we've had to crack the whip a few times and push them to do stuff that they would have done at their own pace. But like the president said, we're in a hurry. So we can't afford to just leave them to do things the way they want, in the timing that they want. But we have a great relationship, and I think they also appreciate the fact that we've worked to facilitate the efficiency and output of their various organizations. It's a symbiotic relationship. We need each other. Government needs them. They also need us. So we necessarily have to work very closely together. And so I'm proud of the relationship that we've been able to build over time with them. They also recognize that I used to be in the industry. So there are a few things that they can get past, others that they can't get past me. So that enables us to, we respect each other, and we work very, very closely together. And I'm glad with the way it's evolving. frustrations abound, as with every relationship, but you overcome them and you look beyond them and you forge ahead. And once you go past them, it strengthens the relationship. So I'm grateful for the work that the players in this sector have done on their own and in partnership with government. And I'm looking forward to even greater interactions and joint projects with them, because that's the only way our industry will grow. And I think once that footprint is in place, it enables so many other entrepreneurs to build applications and systems on that network, which can only inure to the benefit of the citizens of this country. Banking services, insurance services, health provision, trading, you name it, educational extension service, agric extension services. Our next focus is agric technology, by the way.
Fantastic.
And we're looking at how we can use technology to also improve this sector. But as I indicated to the Minister for Information yesterday, there's so much we're doing, and we're about to implement another World Bank funded project which will focus on agric technology and tech entrepreneurship and support for that sector, and so many other things that we need time to sit down and discuss the Ghana Digital Acceleration Project as well, which is a whole new chapter that's opening up. It's the follow-up to the e-Transform project that is winding up now, and that's also done a lot of work that we need to talk about. So we've done a fair bit of work which has laid lasting foundations, and I'm glad. I keep saying that there's a quiet revolution unfolding. Don't people realize that I've been very quiet these past few years because I've kept my head down because there's so much work to do. But now I can come up for air and say that nipa baby, but so fine in several areas. I'm quite proud of the work that my team and I have been able to do with the support of the private sector.
The mischievous boy in me was thinking that does that suggest that you didn't do any work when you were more vocal? But we won't go there. Your
that's what let me finish. That's why I find work for myself wherever I am. I don't like sitting idle, so I do stuff in public, in private, just to keep myself occupied.
Absolutely. ICT for AD is actually a 2003.
2003.
Yeah, so your first
was right.
gut feel was right, yes. We're going to come to the Ghana.gov story in a moment.
Okay.
Because it looks like a very important foundation on which we can drive the digital advancement project. But you mentioned agric technology. You talked about the e-Transform and I just want us to help us paint a picture for our audience. Where do you see Ghana beyond the e-Transform project? Who's going to be affected, and how will that inure to their benefit?
About 20 ministries, departments, and agencies benefited from e-Transform. So if you find it easier to register your company with the Office of the Registrar of Companies now. I keep forgetting what their new Registrar General's Department. I'm old school, so it's stuck in my head. Office of the Registrar of Companies. If you find it easier to register your company now and get an e-certificate now, it's because of the e-Transform project. If you've benefited from the e-Justice transformation of our judicial sector, it's because of the e-Transform project. We've done e-procurement as well with the Ghana electronic procurement system that we have provided for the Public Procurement Authority, and are paying consultants to manage that system for them. That's only 3. We've worked with the Attorney General's office to provide them with equipment and training to enable them provide better services to the criminal justice sector and the other civil work that they do. E-immigration, we've worked to digitize many of their records. Births and deaths registry has also benefited from the e-transform project in modernizing their operations. Now, if you don't digitize your manual operations, it's difficult for you to be connected and interoperable with other agencies and to even have access to the Ghana.gov platform. You need to digitize your manual operations before you can be put on the government's platforms and to work closely and with other agencies that already have digital services. So we're working with all these sectors. Immigration, Ghana Meteorological Services has also been provided with automatic weather stations to enhance their operations. We have modernized several post offices around our country to enable them to provide e-services. The list is endless. Now, one thing that I'm particularly proud of is our work with the Ghana Tech Lab and the Kumasi Business Incubator, which is in KNUST. Now, these two won an internationally competitive bid to provide services to tech entrepreneurs, training, hand-holding, incubation for tech entrepreneurs to be able to scale up.
Awesome.
And they've been provided funding. So I believe about 4,000 small businesses have been supported. I need to get the figures for you, but that's one of the other things that I really wanted to talk about. But I don't have it on the top of my mind now. All of these agencies have been supported, and they in turn have also supported other businesses. So about 40,000 people have been trained with digital skills across the country through this initiative. And beyond that, they're going to be part of the beneficiaries of the Digital Acceleration Project as well.
Super.
From incubation through acceleration to growth, so that they can also build their own businesses and employ others. So that through that, we're creating employment as well and reducing the youth unemployment and tapping into the innovative skills or potential of Ghanaians. Now, yesterday, I indicated that Ghana.gov was built by 3 Ghanaian firms, IT firms. The national ID is powered by a Ghanaian firm, Margins ID. The digital property address system was also developed by a Ghanaian firm now called Xtra. These are all interventions that are world-class, and they are speaking to contemporary challenges that we have in this country. But the same challenges exist in other parts of the continent and the world. And so if government partners the private sector, government is the largest employer. And there's always been significant interest with people fronting for companies from other parts of the world for government contracts. So if you insist that a Ghanaian company be giving that opportunity, you create enemies for yourself elsewhere. But we know what we're doing. I think it's incumbent on us for government, and I keep saying for government to use its purchasing power to grow the sector. And it is possible. We can do it because we have examples of what government has done in the sector to energize it. And so instead of paying foreign consultants and contractors to do it, let's give our own innovators a chance. Others might scream, they don't have experience, they don't have too much of a proven track record. But if you don't give them a chance, how are they going to get that experience?
Yeah.
And you have to make mistakes and learn from them to succeed. So for me, if there's a Ghanaian company which can do some work as against a foreign company that can do it, I prefer to give the opportunity to the Ghanaian company because those that have been helped have proven that they can rise up to the challenge and deliver once we have faith in them. So The tech lab, which is housed in the Accra Digital Center, that's another story that we'll come to. We inherited an empty shell, which was not connected to electricity or the internet.
We'll come to
it's another story. But like I said, governance is a continuum.
Yeah.
It is the state's money or money that the state will pay for that has been used to develop those structures and institutions. So you don't just say, my government didn't do it, so I'll leave it to rot. No. I think that's an irresponsible attitude to have.
Yeah.
And so it's incumbent on you to give effect to the intention that led to the creation of that establishment and make sure that it works, which is what we've done with the Accra Digital Center. And I tout it as a key achievement of this government, building on what the previous government has done. So the e-Transform project has empowered about 20 different agencies. The ministry itself has benefited from it. The Cabinet Secretariat has benefited from it. We had to restructure it in 2017 to include some of these agencies that I've mentioned, because they weren't included in the original one. Cybersecurity is one agency that has benefited enormously from that as well. NITA has been supported considerably through this as well. So a lot of work has been done, and I think for the first time in the annals of the World Bank, the original funding amount was $97 million. Exchange losses and all of that reduced it to about 86 or thereabouts that we could actually use. But after the restructure, we impressed upon them that there's so much more that we can do to scale up some of the original interventions and add some more. So they gave us additional funding of $117 million, which is much more than the original funding. And they usually don't do that. And as at now, about 90% of the funds have been disbursed, activities have been implemented, and I spoke about one of them, the government network, the eGovNet that we've put in place, which is absolutely revolutionary. Benefits of it will be seen not immediately, immediately, because about 951 institutions have been connected on a high-speed broadband, delivering from 1 gig to 10 gig to each of these institutions depending on their need. It's 100 gigabits per second network. Very cutting edge equipment that they have in there to deliver services. And that network alone has built 3,000 kilometers of backhaul fiber. People say this government hasn't done anything. I just laugh. 3,000 kilometers of backhaul on this one network alone, and 500 kilometers of last mile fiber. So one intervention alone has built more fiber. I mean, government has built more fiber through one intervention alone than the previous government did. Not to talk about NCA licensed private sector fiber that has been laid. So let's not do this comparison. It's counterproductive. I say let's recognize the work that the previous government did and add on to it for the benefit of the people of Ghana. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do in this sector.
Okay. So, Honorable Minister, and I mean, one of the ways you seek to solve the problems of the consumers of these network services is you cracking the whip. You talk about that, and you do that through the quality of service audits, and I'm sure from the history of it you realize that the availability of some of these cell sites to host some of these antennas is very instrumental. So you are doing it for the rural purposes and providing through 2G and 3G facilities, I guess. So you are doing some work, a lot, and you are taking it to the countryside. But you are not too distant a neighbor. You are the Otinshi side. When you come to the other side, the Ajingano side, you look at the boundary road. And I don't know if you've paid attention. Anytime you're driving on that side of town, the quality of the network.
There are dead spots.
Exactly.
Some dead spots.
Beautiful. So I know you know. And I think what we used not to have as much of a problem at that side of town. They are doing another side. But then there was a decommissioning of a cell site because, of course, a private person owns property.
Yep.
So how is the government partnering with the MNOs to ensure that, I mean, for strategic national assets like this, which provide services to a significant chunk of people, because if you're looking at the motorway, the Tema-bound side, the entire left side, a lot of development, both commercial and then also, I mean, residential going on. How are we helping or partnering with the private sector to solve these problems?
Now, that's a very interesting point you brought up, and I started smiling when you talked about the black spots
Yes.
in our connectivity.
And especially because this one is urban.
Yes.
And not rural, yeah.
In most residential areas, there's a lot of noise being made about the health impact of towers in the communities. Most of it isn't true, by the way. And I think the NCA has done a fair bit of work to educate the public on that fact. But before you mount a cell site, you need to do engagement with the community. Before you get better quality of service, you need a certain number of cell sites to carry your radios and other equipment. So if you don't have that, there will be black holes in the service that you provide. There will be interruptions in the service that you provide. So sometimes we need to weigh the balance of it. And in residential areas, in the urban areas as well, most of these properties are for individuals. And so if they say, I don't want your cell site, maybe I bought that property from someone who had agreed to the erection of a mast there. I don't want it there, come and remove it. If you remove that cell site and you don't find an alternate site close by, the service that is provided to the people in that locality will be impacted negatively. The technology is evolving, and so there are ways of reducing that impact. And we're on our way to Barcelona, and every time these technology equipment manufacturers are showcasing all kinds of inventions. Now, some are even smaller than this console here, which you can mount on a wall anywhere, and it can transmit services. But if you have legacy systems, old systems, ripping them out and putting in this new technology is expensive. And so it's a challenge that the network operators have to see what they can do to optimize their own networks, to address some of these challenges that are coming up. And that's why I'm particularly glad that government is willing to partner them in some of these interventions. And for this new government that we've built, they use the latest equipment. So they don't have that challenge that older companies like Vodafone and MTN and Airtel, AT would have. So how can we provide the means for these new firms to work with these old firms to maximize their networks? And so I spoke about it yesterday, that if we link up the government-owned infrastructure, which now has a nationwide footprint, if we connect it to the rural telephony project, we connect it to NITA's own existing infrastructure, you have a robust system, which even the existing mobile network operators can lease capacity from to deal with the areas where their networks are having challenges, so that ultimately you and I would benefit from it. One major issue that I've been trying to address, and we've been wondering how we'll grapple with that, is the dead spots along the highways. If you're traveling and you have a problem, would you be able to make a call for help? in certain parts of the highway. In certain parts of the highway, you won't get a network. So what can we do to improve connectivity along the highways? So we'll be working with the network operators in conjunction with the Rural Telephony Project to see how we can also expand connectivity along our highways and improve the services that we provide, so that in case you're being attacked, you can call for help and help will be immediately available. That's why I'm glad that so many post offices, police stations have also been connected nationwide, so they don't have the excuse of saying that we couldn't receive the call because we didn't have a network. So the infrastructure has been provided. It's incumbent on the police administration to also work to ensure that they maximize the use of it for the benefit of their own people. I think 256 police stations across the country have already been connected. 25 out of 22, 255 out of 256 police stations have been connected to this network nationwide.
Only one not connected.
Only one. In fact, that's the only site that has not been connected under this project. So we have connected 950 out of 951.
I see.
And they started just a year ago. And it's a Ghanaian company. So I am excited that if you give them the opportunity, they really will live up to expectations. So I think, and I've been telling them that we need to work towards having shared infrastructure in this sector.
Yeah.
Not all the network operators don't all have to build their own fiber to extend services to a particular locality. If your competitor has fiber and has excess capacity on that, lease capacity from it and deliver the services that you want through it. The Rural Telephony Project is a shared infrastructure. Government has put in the infrastructure. All of them are delivering their services over that infrastructure. We're using some of their donor towers to extend connectivity to this network. So we're all working in partnership on this network, and it is going well. If we can do this for rural telephony, why can't we do it for the other parts of their network? I think it's doable. So I've been telling them that they need to share their infrastructure. They need to share their active infrastructure and passive infrastructure. Well. Passive being they're already co-locating on the towers.
Yeah.
They need to go beyond that and share some of their actual services that they are providing. But they tell me that there's congestion on their network. They need to deal with that. That's impacting on the quality of service. So they can't let another network ride on their infrastructure if theirs is also congested. And we're working on them to see how we can resolve that.
And just to follow up on this, and a few, I mean, for some weeks now, the CEO of MTN Ghana, who is now moving to South Africa effective somewhere April, has been talking because it's a part of his processes to leave. And he talks about how much of investment they've made in the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, the network infrastructure. But, you know, they can only go as much, but the rest of the legs would have to be a nationally owned thing. So you are doing some of these things. With this kind of challenge, for instance, that I cite as an example, I mean, expropriation allows for government to do certain things.
That's not a good word.
You know, so, I mean, I think we have an act that has that name. Yeah, so, I mean, so it's there. So, does the government not consider some of these? Because the gravamen of expropriation is the fact that there is a certain public need and benefit. And so you'll be compensated for that expropriation, and then the general society gets to benefit from this kind of facility. Is it not a policy option, even legal option, that the government is considering just to improve the general good of the people?
That's a last resort. I believe in dialogue and cooperation and collaboration. If that fails, then we can consider that. Mind you, telecoms infrastructure is critical national information infrastructure, and under the law as well, if government decides that this tower needs to be there. And so we're sorry for if we can't find any alternative, and it's going to impact negatively on the work of a network operator, then we'll come in and engage with the landowners or the residents in that area and talk to them and get them to understand that, one, there are very little, the emissions from cars are more dangerous than the emissions from
the radiation,
towers.
yeah.
The radiation from towers is minimal and has been tested. And so that fear is irrational, is misplaced. But people have that feeling, so you need to continually engage and explain things to them. So it hasn't gotten to that yet. And I'm hoping that it won't get to that yet, because we're reasonable people. So when you explain things to them, they tend to understand it and allow those things to happen. And I've told them that if they have any major challenge with some of these systems, they can talk to us. There's one problem brewing around the London site for SAT3, which is near the old Ghana Telecom offices on the High Street.
Okay.
That is being claimed by an organization that land belongs to them. And I've told them that, sorry, that's where an undersea cable lands. And so the area that they need to operate from, you can't touch it.
This is the Marine Drive area.
Yep. Some organization who shall remain nameless for now is claiming that that particular portion belongs to them. And it's come to my attention, and I've sent my officials to tell them that, nope, it's a critical national asset. And so you cannot, you have to, if indeed it belongs to you, and I'm not sure about that, they're doing the checks, you can't touch it. So you relax, we'll deal with that issue. And if there's some compensation, if indeed it's proven that the land belongs to them, would see about government acquiring that land, or would take the necessary steps to secure that infrastructure, which is critical for the delivery of the telecoms network to significant portions of the population. So we can't afford to just have them rip it up. It may belong to a private a company, but it is contributing to the government's digital infrastructure stock, and so the country's digital infrastructure stock. So we can't afford to just allow private interest to trump the public interest. So there's a balance that you have to strike. But once you explain it to people, they tend to understand it and allow the companies to operate.
And unfortunately, I know Kweku will take the mic from me soon, but let me just throw this one in. And you talk about some of these strategic national infrastructure, fiber cables, and some interventions, the towers, and how you have, for instance, had to erect some of them on poles, because of some of the cuts. And again, I've been listening within the industry, and there are rules when it comes to construction for a number of things, including electricity cables and
relocation,
all of those kinds of things. But there are concerns that there isn't established a policy or a law around some of these fiber infrastructure when it comes to construction and how they are to be treated. And so even the time that will be spent in repairing cut fiber in itself creates a lot of problem. I mean, fortunately, you're a lawyer. You've worked in the telco space for God knows how long. I mean, what are you doing, leading your team, to get some of these things captured in some codified document to protect the industry? Because we are all the better for it, at least if there are some guidelines to that effect.
It already is. The fiber is classified as critical national information infrastructure, and is one of the list of things that are captured under our cybersecurity legislation as well. And so we're working closely. And there's actually a standing committee of the industry, Department of Urban Roads, Ministry of Roads, Environment. There's a standing committee that's supposed to be dealing with these issues. I think it's chaired by Ken Ashigbe.
telecoms chamber.
Yeah, of the telecoms chamber. He chairs that committee. But we still have challenges with fiber cuts. There's not only the time that they need to repair it and the down times that we experience because of interruptions of telecom service, but the more you repair the fiber, the more it degrades.
Exactly.
So the quality itself...
So you certainly have too much latency.
Yes, the quality itself degrades. So we have to, and I've told the minister, well, the former minister for roads, he's moving on now, and I'll be engaging with Honorable Asenso on this as well, that just as they take time and make provision for relocating utilities, electricity and water, fiber is also a utility. So it has to be accorded the same treatment. Now, Cabinet has even issued a directive that for all new road construction, provide ducts alongside it for fiber cables. You dig once, you put, before you complete the road construction, build the ducts into the road construction so that any subsequent need for fiber, they only need to open the access points and pass the fiber through it without disturbing the roads. Another issue that degrades the quality of our roads is telecoms companies and their contractors cutting across
the
roads to put in their cables. We need not do that. Cabinet has issued a directive that make provision for it. But, you know, our public servants, sometimes from the brain to the hands and feet, it takes a long time for the instruction.
It's an interministerial issue
to get there. So we're working on that. I have already, well, like I said, we've had significant engagements with the previous minister. The chief director is aware of it. So I believe that for the Tema motorway reconstruction is going to be done. It was done along the High Street, the Nungwa stretch. That was done.
The Lekma Road.
I don't know about. I'm not sure about the Lekma Road, but the new construction being done on the Teshinungwa through that whole stretch.
Yeah.
I think that was done, but it has to be institutionalized. It doesn't have to be one or two roads. All road construction, once you start the road anywhere in this country, let the contractors put in, it's just the pipes with access points alongside it, so that it saves the lifespan of the roads and it protects the fiber from also being disturbed.
And more importantly, I think it also has benefit for future expansion.
Absolutely. Because the capacity is increasing.
I remember when fibers entered this country in 2004. 2005, thereabout. It was as if everywhere you went, there was a mini crater. They were digging up the roads, and then they wouldn't do it properly, you know. So, and at the time, I sort of thought to myself, elsewhere, these upgrades are done with very little or no wahala to movement and to the road surfaces. But I'm excited by some of the stuff that you've talked about, and I really want us to clear the Ghana.gov matter in a moment. But interoperability and geopolitics.
Absolutely. I'm glad.
Now, on this, our continent, so we've got the Francophone and the Anglophone bloc. Some have suggested that these two blocks and the folks who have sort of influence in these spaces have made it very difficult for a lot of unified ideas and policies to be, implemented. You've talked about roaming. We have in-country roaming, nice. Togo, there's Benin, there's Gambia, and everywhere else. How are you ensuring that the geopolitics that affect this dream of a united continent will not scuttle this plan of a continent-wide interoperability?
Integration is the larger aim of the interoperability, and we've been talking about African regional or continental integration for a long time. where there's a will, there's a way. And I think we can even put the Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone matter to rest.
Okay.
They're all companies operating in these areas. ECOWAS free roaming was adopted in 2016. And that was before I came to office. But I think one of the first meetings I attended was an ECOWAS ICT ministers meeting in Cape Verde in 2017 when this matter came up. Ghana needed to amend its law because of a few things to be able to do it. But we've amended our law. And when we met in 2018, I was like, so what's next? We've done what we have to do. What's next? And everybody kept coming up with excuses. It was either one thing or the other. So I said, you know something? Let's start. Let there be a coalition of the willing. Those who are willing, ready, and able to do it. Let's start so that the others can also emulate it and log into what we have done. You needed your regulators to start talking to each other about the how, because they regulate the sector. And you needed the telecoms operators to also start talking about the technical ways of linking their systems so that we can provide the service. It's not rocket science. So after going back and forth and nothing much happening, we started talking to Cote d'Ivoire. That's a Francophone country. Ghana is an Anglophone country, but it's our neighboring country. So we started talking to them and we said, look, there's a lot of traffic between our two countries, and people need to communicate. It doesn't make sense. It even solves another problem of the networks in another country's signal being picked up along our neighboring countries and vice versa. So once you have mandated this roaming exercise, it really doesn't matter, because you'll be paying the same thing as you pay locally, whether you're riding on the network from Cote d'Ivoire or a network from Ghana. And so we got together in a very short while. And I must thank our regulators, the NCA and the Ivorian regulator, for the amount of effort that they put in to make this happen. And our telecoms companies. But once the regulator says, do it, you will have to do it if you want to continue operating. So by June last year, the systems were connected and the agreement was signed, and it is operating quite well. But the others take notice. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have done it. Okay. Now Togo says, I want in. That's another Francophone country, our neighboring country. And they're already in talks to work on how we're going to connect it. So that problem of boundary or border, whatever, interference is also resolved. We don't have that issue with Cote d'Ivoire now. Once we complete it with Togo, we won't have that issue anymore. Burkina Faso is a little tricky because of their current...
They're in a very beautiful transition at the moment.
But even the current government recognizes that they cannot live in isolation. Yes, they're thinking about their tripartite bloc, but they need other countries as well. So I'm hopeful that once the integration picks up, and we will connect with with Togo, with Benin, and the Gambia, and beyond. Now we're going to start talking to Nigeria as well, where the largest traffic is.
Our distant neighbor.
Our distant neighbor. But it should have been easier to do it with Nigeria, but it was easier to do it with Cote d'Ivoire. So the geopolitics doesn't really matter once there's a will and the desire to do it. And we get our agencies talking together and our sectors talking together. We can easily do this mobile network interoperability on the continent if only 3 companies start it.
I know them.
MTN, Orange, and Vodafone. And that cuts across more than half of the continent. AU decisions being translated into actionable policies
and bankable programs.
are also tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But let the countries decide that we need this. And for this, the ministers of telecommunications and ICT need to be at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
The regulators need to be at the forefront of it. We sit these companies down and tell them, look, we need this for the integration of the continent. We need it to facilitate trade in the continent. We hear you. We know what your challenges are. Let's see how we work towards addressing it so that we can all link up our systems and reduce this traffic. Do you know that some of the settlements that need to be done have to be done in Europe?
Yeah.
Before being translated back to the continent.
Mm-hmm.
What sense does it make in this day and age?
Not financial nor logical.
So, where there's a will, there's a way. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and our neighboring countries have shown the way that it is doable.
Okay.
So once our ministers, our regulators sit in a room and decide on the modalities and give timelines, it is doable. So I'm glad that the AU has adopted this as a policy, but sometimes their bureaucracy kills things and makes it difficult for it to move. So they should engage these two groups and lock them up in a room for a week, and we'll come up with solutions.
They will come out with solutions. The beauty of any government's development vision is that it will have three key components. The vision is definitely going to be broken down into policies and programs, but it's people that make it work. I remember you saying you're old school, but you're new school compared to a lot of people who are working within the civil service. Technology frightens people.
I know.
How are you dealing with that?
We are. It's one of the things that we'll talk about later. In fact, I was supposed to deal with that topic, but there were too many other things to talk about. We have a Dig Smart program that we're currently implementing to provide public and civil servants with digital skills.
Right.
Now, I think it is difficult to expect them to implement policies that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And we assume that because we want this, they should do it. So let's equip them with the skills and the knowledge that we need. And it also goes for policy makers as well, those who are supposed to be taking the decisions for the civil servants to implement. So we've been training policy makers. It's been difficult to get the ministers, but we'll get them. But chief directors and implementers of these policies have all been part of this project. We've done, with the support of the Tony Blair Institute last year, we trained 100 public servants, civil and public servants, in conjunction with the head of civil service, and they've been extremely cooperative. And I think they all got it and understood, this has been extremely beneficial. So how do we scale it up so that many more people would also benefit from it? So it was launched 2 weeks ago, I believe, the Dig Smart Phase 2. And 870 civil and public servants are also going to benefit from this. Now, it's incumbent...
So that's an 8-fold scale up.
Yep. I wanted 1,000.
You're in a hurry.
I wanted to do 1,000, but funding challenges. But I think it's a good start. Now, I want it to be institutionalized so that an institution like Kofi Annan ICT Center will be charged with upgrading the skills of civil servants periodically, in exposing them to some of these emerging technologies, existing technologies, benefits, how they can be utilized in their own institutions, and all of that, for the benefit of not just their institutions, but the civil and public service as a whole and the nation. Once they understand the need for the introduction of certain policies, it makes it easier. Otherwise, you get significant pushback. And human beings can frustrate the implementation of many policies if they don't understand it. they decide that there's nothing in it for them, it is not in their interest to do it, it's going to interfere with their own little arrangements that have been going on for a while and all of that. But once you make them understand the imperative for the introduction of some of these things, it helps. And with the support of the head of civil service, once it's institutionalized, maybe when they're engaged or if they haven't gone through that program, they are facilitated to get that program. Civil servants go to GIMPA for training and all of that periodically. I think we should position Kofi Annan ICT Center to be able to deliver some of these trainings to the civil servants on a sustainable basis so that we can institutionalize it, and it is not one or two people who would choose because they are interested in it to have that training. But once you're engaged in the public service or a civil service, you will be required to have that kind of exposure periodically. And I think it's also doable. But it's one of the things that we're doing already. We've worked with the Smart Africa. We've set up a Smart Africa Digital Academy here in Ghana, which has trained members of boards in the sector, several other public sector decision makers, and I think that's also gone very, very well. They delivered that training in partnership with the Kofi Annan ICT Center. So it's something that is ongoing, but these have been piecemeal interventions, and I think because of how pivotal and necessary it is, we need to institutionalize it. We hear horror stories of vendors, ICT vendors, who are pushing products which are designed to solve problems in various sectors. But because there's no one in that company that is IT tech savvy, they ram obsolete end of life equipment down on these institutions who think they have computerized their operations, they've digitalized their operations, but within 2-3 years. Or sometimes the annual software and service charges are so prohibitive that you cannot sustain these interventions. So another initiative we've introduced, which should have been long overdue, is to insist that for any agency, which ministry, department and agency, which wants to procure any digital ICT intervention service application, run it by NITA.
Yeah.
Run it by the National Information Technology Agency.
It makes perfect sense.
It is the IT advisor to government.
Yeah.
Just like the Attorney General is the legal advisor to the government. And so before you let somebody hoodwink you into buying something which is not fit for purpose because you don't really understand the sector, just give a call to NITA and say, we're about to procure the service. These are the specifications. What do you think? Through NITA's intervention, several agencies and the state have been saved millions of dollars. We have a nationwide Microsoft license. We have already bought it and are paying annually for it. So if a vendor says it is providing a service and it needs some Microsoft
license
or software and has or puts that, includes that in the cost that you're supposed to pay, tell them no, Ghana already has it. And then work with NITA so that you would also contribute towards paying for the nationwide license instead of getting your own standalone license. So there are a lot of things that we're trying.
Well, I guess even at the inception of these ideas and projects, they could even consult with NITA to create the specs,
to design it for them. Absolutely.
That is required. That might actually be far more beneficial. I mean, that's a pretty good thing to do. I can't help but take us down this road because I saw this post on social media. I'm not sure who authored it, but I'm going to paraphrase what this person tried to say with this, and it leads us to the Ghana.gov conversation. So this person says that there was once upon a time eservices.gov.gh, which was initiated by the NDC, and that all that the current government claims and your ministry under your watch is claiming to have done with Ghana.gov was a change in URL. You simply bought a domain and made us believe you actually did some work. That's what this thing suggests. What's the story?
It's unfortunate. The idea behind e-services is great. And it is incumbent that government services are easily accessible for the people and paid for instantly.
Yeah.
And the money is received by the agency instantly, so that it reduces the avenues for public sector corruption. However, in its implementation, the e-services that was done by the NDC faced several challenges, and so it wasn't able to achieve what it was intended for. Only 5 agencies actually provided service under it, and it was so patchy and had such a poor user experience that the uptake that was expected didn't materialize. And we found out that the annual service fees were also prohibitive, and so NITA could not support this, and we needed to look at a more sustainable way of delivering the same service. So did we just change a URL? No. The entire e-services system was scrapped in 2020. We put it aside.
Why?
You look at the cost of maintaining that service, the challenges that it was facing. So many people, the platform that was supposed to be delivering the e-payment was provided by Aya Technologies. And they just, the same issue that we're discussing with agencies procuring services and passing them off on other people. This time it was NITA, which was a victim, if I should say it. But they procured a Magento e-commerce platform that is used by small businesses to do e-commerce.
That's open source.
Open source. And there's no way they could have scaled it up to provide the payment solution for the e-services platform that we had, or the government had in mind at the time. But maybe for want of, they went through the procurement process and won the bid. And so they were asked to provide it. Magento itself was bought by another company. Aya Technologies was bought by another company, which wasn't interested in providing the service. So they had significant challenges sustaining this platform after it was set up. And so the payment component couldn't be properly or effectively used. And the business model for it, NITA had to find money to sustain it, pay for the operations and maintenance, annual software licensing fees, all of that, money which they didn't have. So it was up 1 minute, down the next. Now, if you want to use this platform and the service is unavailable, you just go back to the manual way of doing things after a while. Lack of revenue was a challenge. Very few banks, only 5 banks were also integrated. 4 banks were integrated to the system. It was supposed to be able to use Visa, the Visa card, but payments that were recorded as successful here were unsuccessful on the global platform, and so the payment would not go through. Several other challenges, frequent downtimes, lack of user friendliness, all of that. So we were faced with 2 choices. Either upgrade e-services and make it usable and deal with these challenges, and government should find money periodically to pay for the operations and maintenance of the platform, or scrap it and build a new service altogether. And we chose the second option. And so we engaged 3 local IT firms, Haptel, ExpressPay, and IT Consortium.
Okay.
And the vice president was also very instrumental in this as well. To design, develop an entirely new system, integrate all the banks in this country, all payment systems, integrate to GIPS, the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlements System. If you're going to be using the banks, they had to have a means of doing their reconciliation at the end of the day, and it's only GIPS which could do that. Integrate with GRA so that they could have visibility on all the transactions. The Ministry of Finance should also have visibility on all the transactions. Controller and Accountant General should also be involved in all of that. E-Services did none of that. More importantly, all the funds that were raised under this platform, because they were raised by government agencies, should go directly into the consolidated fund at the end of every day. And then the agencies, because all the internally generated funds of all agencies also have to go to be lodged in your account in the Bank of Ghana. And because of the capping, you will get 60, 70 or 100% of it. And the state also retains a portion of it. Getting that money from IGF generating agencies was a challenge for the Ministry of Finance. So Trano, find a way that let it all go to the consolidated fund. You know how much you've generated within the period. Finance knows how much you've generated. Controller knows how much you've generated. GRA knows how much you've generated. So the reconciliation shouldn't be a problem. So you can get whatever you require at the end of the day. This is a totally new system that was built with functionalities that e-services didn't even think of providing. And so it's been possible for it to generate an significant amount of revenue within the 3 years of its operation, 210 billion cedis plus. And that's just from 136 active users of the system. So
this is money that's been settled into the consolidated
directly, 210 billion directly into the consolidated fund. And the taxes that the government has earned from it, I have another document somewhere. I should be able to pull that up.
Well, if you just tuned in, this is the Asaase Breakfast Show. It's 9:33, and we're talking to the Honourable Minister for Communications and Digitalisation, Madame Ursula Owusu-Ekuful. She's also the MP for Ablekuma West constituency. And we're looking at the digital divide and its impact on you and I. We live in a digital world. And so work that's being done to ensure that we're not left behind, and you and I left behind in the process. So now we're talking about the Ghana.gov and the migration from eservices.gov.gh to Ghana.gov. So we've raised tax revenue from all the processing, which has amounted to over 210 billion cedis in 3 years.
201 million in taxes alone. 201 million in taxes alone on this platform. Now, if you compare e-service, I just want us to run through a few things.
Okay.
E-services was launched in July 2014, and Ghana.gov was launched in July 2021.
You both like July.
Apparently. It costs $814,000 to set up e-services for both IPMC, which set up the services component,
that's right,
and Aya Technologies, which set up the payments component of e-services. It cost the government of Ghana $0 to set up Ghana.gov.
Okay.
Both systems were in operation for 30 months.
Okay.
E-services onboarded 13 agencies, only 5 of whom were active.
Okay.
The others were on the platform to provide downloadable forms, information, and all of that. Ghana.gov has onboarded 1,507 institutions within the 30 months of operation. The average processed value per year on both platforms was 41 million for e-services and 42 billion for Ghana.gov annually.
Wow.
Process value. The unique platform users, those who actually use the platform, 66,273 for e-services and 2,628,517 for Ghana.gov.
Mm-hmm.
And live transactions on the various platforms. E-services was 186,000. Ghana.gov is 33.6 million. Payment or settlements into the consolidated fund, we're not aware of any done by e-services, but 654 count the number of actual settlements made. The number of settlements made, 654 have been done into the consolidated fund. And then the value of money which has actually been paid into consolidated accounts, 210.3 billion from that Ghana.gov. How can you say that this was just a change in URL? Look, I mean, let's recognize that, yes, we had the same idea. In execution, we had challenges. These people have come. They've taken that idea because it is good for government's business. Mm-hmm. And they've taken it to another level. And they have delivered. And we're seeing the results of it. We wish we could have done it. We couldn't. But they have done it. Let's applaud them for it. It doesn't take anything from anybody. And it's just a sign of our own honesty in admitting that, yes, we started. It didn't go as well as we would have expected. Ghana.gov is doing what we wanted to do and more, because the functionalities aren't the same. The services being provided far exceed what the e-services attempted to do, and they did attempt to do it. I'll give them that. So you started, it didn't quite work out. We've put it aside, put in place a new system, and it is working quite well for the country. Mm-hmm. So let's be proud of what 3 Ghanaian IT firms have been able to do. This is world class. I want to promote them globally. Mm-hmm. And so if I have unfortunately, ITU has stopped doing its Telecoms World program. Yeah. I would have taken them there for them to showcase what they have done, for other ITU countries to see what indigenous African Ghanaian companies have been able to do, and for others to replicate it. However, several countries come here for study visits. And when they do come here, we make them experience some of our digital interventions. We have a few lined up. Even Nigeria is coming again soon.
Okay.
Sierra Leone has been, the Gambia has been, Malawi has been, Tanzania is coming here again. So we showcase the digital interventions that we have made. We're not afraid to share our experiences with our compatriots on the continent, because that's the only way that we will all grow. Now, if a Ghanaian company can do this, why do you have to bring an Indian or American or
any other
company to come and do it? Let's try a greater South-South cooperation and use our own African companies who have excelled. And Free Fanum is working in other parts of the continent because people came to see our digital address system and wanted to replicate it. So I know that they're in talks with Lesotho, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, and other countries. And I'll be very proud if they land contracts there to do their work there, and tap our shoulders that we gave them the leg up. We gave them the opportunity to showcase what they could do, which is working so well that others want to also emulate it. And why not? I say we are the digital black star. We're showing the way for other countries on the continent to emulate it, because Ghana's success can be Africa's success as well.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and take our last round of questions. This is the Asaase Breakfast Show. Stay with us. The Cybersecurity Authority, I think, is a brilliant idea, because as we do more work in the digital space, aka the cyberspace, we'll be prone to things. The same way people are nowadays stealing people's mobile phones through their windows when they're asleep. The people going to look to steal stuff in the in the digital space as well. So the CSA is a great call. They've been receiving some great ratings from the ITU. Hopefully they continue to keep that up. But what do you make of this present drive to license or accredit, professionals in that space? Call it innovation. Some people think it's much ado about nothing, and it's just a hard drink.
Okay, before I go there, I forgot something, and I have to say it.
Okay.
Comparing e-services to Ghana.gov is like comparing Aboboya to Tesla.
Bars.
They are all vehicles riding on the road, but there's absolutely no basis for comparison. So I beg, let's not go there. Licensing of professionals. Now, cybersecurity is a very, very critical area. And I keep saying that it's the other side of the coin of digitalization. You can't digitalize without looking at the security aspects of it. Otherwise, you leave yourself dangerously exposed to attack from the cyber criminals out there. Now, there are people who claim they are delivering cybersecurity and cyber defense services. How do we know that they actually have the expertise to do what they claim they are doing? The companies, it's a new emerging space. Everybody is scrambling around to look for help because many of us don't know what to do to secure our digital infrastructure from attack. And so anyone who hangs his sign out there and says, I'm a cybersecurity professional, will get work. But we need to be sure that they really are capable of providing the services that they claim they are providing in such a critical area. So it cannot be much ado about nothing. And as part of our interventions to protect our digital economy, the law itself mandates the Cybersecurity Authority to license cybersecurity professionals, training institutions, and companies, those who are delivering cybersecurity services as well, so that they have a baseline criteria and they're benchmarking you amongst the industry best in the world, global industry best practices, so that if you claim you are who you are, do you have the proper certification? Do you have the proper training? Are you properly equipped to deliver that service? That's what we need to do. If a doctor says he's going to take care of you and you are not sure whether he attended a proper medical school or passed his exams, will you submit yourself to the doctor to provide medical services for you? It will be difficult. This is a critical area that we need to focus on very, very well. And I think Ghana and Singapore are one of the two leading the charge, and others are emulating what we're doing in this space. So they've actually started the accreditation of cybersecurity professionals and institutions and companies. And I'll urge anyone who wants to operate in this country in that space to avail themselves of the services that the Cybersecurity Authority provides. In fact, it will be useful if the Director General comes in studio to explain some of these things better to your listeners. And I know that
I hope his budget for publicity has space.
We
for
don't
us.
have money. It's a new institution. It doesn't have money. So it will be your corporate social.
We are building a building for them.
It's stuck.
That
let me go there. It's a very
question,
sore point
actually.
to me.
That was my next question. What's happening to the building?
We're looking for alternative funding sources. GOG is struggling to finance that project, but it's absolutely critical because even where you operate from could be subject to infiltration if it is not properly secure. And for the National Cybersecurity Authority, it needs to operate from a very secure place.
To be our digital Fort Knox.
Absolutely. I've visited cybersecurity establishments in Israel, in the US, in Singapore. Even accessing the place alone is a whole wahala. And when you go there, they turn on red lights across all the ceilings so that everybody in any office knows that unaccredited or unauthorized personnel are in the building. So you need to know what you do, what you say. I was asking, what are all these
red lights?
He said, those who work here know. It's an alert to people that there's some strangers here. So be careful of how you organize yourself. So it's absolutely critical that we find the resources to complete that structure. And hopefully, if we do, from what I've seen in other areas, all the critical sectors would have monitors monitoring their establishments from there, and they would have personnel trained and housed there, so that immediately anything happens, everybody circles the wagons and works towards securing it. If there's any attack somewhere, the notification is sent instantly. So in Israel, for instance, you have the health sector, the energy sector, the educational sector, all utility sectors, electricity, water. They all have monitors in the National Cybersecurity Center on one floor, so that if anything happens, you can actually get help immediately. And we need to replicate similar systems to here, and that's why we're building that center.
Wonderful. Hopefully we'll be able to find the funding to get it going. Final words.
We've done a lot. You asked only one. I thought you were going to ask 15.
Unfortunately, there isn't.
We'll have to come and sit in your office.
We'll come again. And I'll also let the other institutions
you
also.
do realize that our attempt to invite ourselves to our office has been changed to "We'll come again."
No, she is trying to.
Oh,
she's not done.
No, I'm telling you that I'll make I'll provide the opportunity for you to also engage with the various sectors in my agencies in my ministry, so that they can give you a more in-depth information for your listeners and viewers about the work that we've done in the ministry. Digital infrastructure is absolutely essential to the growth and development of this country. The world is changing, and we need to position ourselves to also benefit from the positive effects of this change and protect ourselves from the negative fallouts from this change. We can't afford to be left behind. We can't afford to leave any of our citizens behind. Our young people demand it of us and expect government to also create the conditions for them to innovate, to thrive, to learn, to engage, and to continue to socialize with their peers. All of us, even those of us born before computer, need to also update ourselves and be abreast with what's happening. We're already in it. And if you send a WhatsApp or listen, have a video chat, you're already in the digital age. So don't think you cannot do it. Everybody is trainable. If you're on Facebook, you're sending and receiving messages electronically, you are in the digital world. There's so much more that we can do to enhance our efficiencies in all our workplaces if we all get clued in. So government is working to put in place the infrastructure that will enable all our applications, services, products to ride on, so that we can continue to lead the way for others to follow. We've done a lot. We've come a long way. There's a lot more that needs to be done. But I continually thank His Excellency the President and Vice President Dr. Baumia for giving us the necessary push and encouragement to continue doing the work that we do, and for running interference for us when we get stuck and opening many doors. Another innovation is being launched this morning, the Tap and Go initiative, which is like the Oyster card in the US. And it is not just for buses, but I think even taxis, private operators can also launch onto it and utilize it for their services. So let's all engage and work on improving our access to utilization of and benefits that we derive from all the digital infrastructure that we're putting in place. So I say kudos to the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. It is possible.
Indeed. Well, my final words would be actually 10 or 9, but it would require just one word from you. Are you the running mate we're waiting to be announced?
Me.
Okay, so that
I'm
was
the
a one
Minister
word.
for Communications and Digitalization.
All right, on that note, would like to thank you very much for making time to join us on the Asaase Breakfast Show. It's been a great time learning about what the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization has been doing, and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Shira.
Benjamin.
Yeah, Pong.